Well, hello there. It is Tom here on the behalf of Indestructible Productions once again with another scum build video. I don't know why I hesitated right there. It is a very loving name for this guitar. For those of you who aren't in the know, this guitar is called the Scum because of the back inlay being based off Delane's artwork for The Glory and the Scum. The Glory and the Scum just sounds like a very long name, so we just went with the Scum, which also, you know, sounds a little bit funny. You're calling a guitar a scum, which usually is a rather derogatory term. Anyway, getting back on the video, immediately starting off sidetracked, but we'll get there, So, first things first, go help Josh with whatever he's asking me to do. So yeah, I am now setting up to route out my truss rod. Thank you, Sam. Why don't you put it right there on my neck? Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Yep, and that's me commenting on Sam doing that. He does have his own bench. Probably full of stuff, so he couldn't put it down anywhere. Anyway, yeah. Getting ready to route out the truss rod cavity. Also a very handy jig that Crimson has. Once again, burnishing down. Can find a burnisher of sorts, but this knife I have has a metal stop on the end, and that works just fine. Burnishing both sides, also very important. I am doing this outside of work hours, but as you can see, people at Crimson have a bad habit of not really going home after work. Everybody kind of still stays overtime to work on their own little projects. Josh in the background there is working on a very cool Misfits style guitar. Or I can't remember whether that was going to be a guitar or a bass, but it was cool anyways. Lining it up. This is really funny for if you are a Crimson Guitars subscriber, just try and spot how many of the staff you'll see, how many you recognize. They're always in the background somewhere. Alrighty, so easy does it. I have a cutter that is rounded because my truss rod has a round side to it, so a round router cutter will let that sit very nicely. That sentence was confusing, to say the very least. I'm taking very small passes each time. I think I'm only taking a few mil off every time, just because I don't want to. First off, I don't want to destroy the cutter, and second of all, I don't want to destroy the piece I'm working on. This is just easier. Yeah, sure, it takes longer, but at least it's done properly. Now I sped this up by 500% because, like I said, it is a long process. And I need to keep on making constant checks to make sure that, yes, it's deep enough, yes, it looks good, and things are fitting in as they should. And Manuel there, having a look at how exactly I go about this whole process. Is that... How are your jewels in the background? I can't tell. Oh no, it wasn't either. I'll cut that out. There we are. Thinking. Yes, I figured out what I'm going to do next. So there was the truss rod cavity. I did pick up another cutter to do the end of the truss rod because it is a bit thicker, as you can see right there. I did go a little too far with it, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Ha 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 ha, for those who get the joke. Anywho, wow, I'm really sorry for all these bad jokes. I've been feeling kind of feverish lately, so maybe a fever's coming on and this is me just going all nuts about it. My brain, I'm losing my brain here. So, as I've been trying to say, moved on to the bandsaw. Now I'm cutting the side profile, roughly cutting the side profile for this guitar neck. It is a neck through build, so I need to make sure that I have first the headstock. Oh, this was this portion. Oh, I forgot. No, I'm not cutting the profile. I was cutting the brake angle for the headstock. And of course, leaving it as is would have been disgraceful. Sanding it wouldn't give a good finish, so I'm using this lovely number. I think that was a 5.5 Stanley, or a record. Is that a record? I think it's a record. Plane to kind of plane it down nice and flat. Very poorly. It wasn't really set up all that well. There we go. Now it's gliding and now it's taking off really nice shavings. Admittedly, I did feel a little nervous with everybody staring at my work. Don't know why. I just get that way sometimes. It's unnerving. Next up, I need to make the truss rod access. I decided to do this using a fence and the router, very small router at that, just because it looks a little bit cleaner. If I were to do this with a drill, it would always look a little, I don't know. I mean, I can still make it look nice, but this is definitely a nicer way of doing it. Much more clean, much more precise way of doing it. And once again, taking very small passes. I was just gauging it by eye to see how deep I need to go. Checking that I have proper access. Looks good. Continuing onward. Now to bridge the gap between the two, using a very long drill bit so I don't, well, it just gives me good control. So I'm using a very long drill bit just to connect the truss rod access to the truss rod cavity. Fairly straightforward. Going little by little because I don't want that middle part to break, because that's literally where the nut is going to sit. I don't want there to be a big cavity there. Even if you're not going to see it, I'd just rather not. Better to make it look nice if I can make it look nice, right? So, onwards and upwards, I keep on saying that phrase, I don't know why. But yeah, moving on. Just making sure that my fretboard, that my truss rod is sitting nice and flush to the neck. Covering up the end of the truss rod, just because I don't want glue getting in there. And taking away all the extra masking tape, because I don't want there to be an excess of that either. Figuring out where I want my fretboard. Checking my middle lines. Checking my center lines, I should have said, that I've drawn on both the fretboard and the neck. Just to make sure that everything is where they are. Now, seeing as there is a small gap there, I do need to use a ruler to kind of see where the end of the fretboard and its center line hit. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So there's my center line for the neck. Yes, gauging it by eye does work. but I guess you didn't see what I did there. So I just used the ruler to kind of, I rested it up against the end of the fretboard, just so I could see where it lands on the neck. Now this is me getting rid of the excess on the fretboard, because it was way too long. I don't need it to be that long. And having secured it on with masking tape, I drill 2 small 2mm holes on, I think I did this on the 3rd fret, and then I'll do it on the 15th fret or 17th fret. Nah, I'm just doing it on one of the frets on the other side. I'm doing it either side of the center line, so I have good points to put pins in. 10 mil away from the center line, which means that they're also far enough from the truss rod, not for it to make a big difference. Using the fretboard there to gauge how long I need my cocktail sticks. It's also a very good practice to have. The only bad thing about cocktail sticks and using those is that they have a tendency of snapping when you're gluing on. So if you can replace those with maybe like a plastic or a soft metal even, by all means, go for it. Just checking if there's any wiggle, which there doesn't seem to be. There, checking the center line again, the way I was trying to explain previously, but failing miserably. Everything looks good. So, onwards to gluing. See how I nearly evaded that phrase that I kept on saying this episode for some reason. One very important thing to keep in mind, you don't need too much glue, but you need to be very careful that you don't put too little glue. You don't want to basically starve the joint, but you don't also want to kind of kill it with excess glue, because that's just going to make the cleanup a lot messier. And besides, you don't need to waste that much glue. Just as long as you can tell that as long as you can tell that the entire surface is covered in glue, you should be fine. And I think I did put on way too much. At least it looks like it. Yeah, that's quite a bit. Also, something that's very handy is having a serrated edge on your card that you're using to spread the glue. There we go. One of my cocktail sticks fell out, so now I need to make sure it... There we go. Fits in place. Oh no, yeah, it snapped, so I had to get a new one. And it was a very poor time for it to actually do that, because I do not have the time. I tried to cut it with a scalpel because I don't have the time. As you can see, I'm starting to kind of panic a little bit, which I shouldn't need to. I have everything under control. I have all the clamps ready. I have my clamping cauls ready. The fretboard's looking good. It hasn't moved anywhere as of yet. A very important way, or very good way of doing this, is basically clamping, from the inside outward. This way you're making sure that you aren't clamping on both ends and creating a sort of like bulge in the middle. That more you're kind of evening it out from the middle outwards. Shouldn't make too big of a difference if you have your pins correctly aligned, but interesting thing to keep in mind. Once again, you don't need an excess amount of pressure, but you have to have a good bit just to see that the glue is splurging from everywhere evenly. There we are. But yeah, once again, we're reaching the end of another episode. I hope you've enjoyed this and my very off the rails commentary, especially for this episode. I'm sorry. But then again, if you enjoy that sort of stuff, you're welcome, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what else to say right now except for thanks for checking it out. Feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the little bell next to the like button, and comment to tell me what you guys think. Alright, see you guys later. Bye bye.